Welcome to November to Remember 2006, ECW's return to pay-per-view. Heatwave was billed and promoted as such, but actually aired on ECW.com. Now we're at cult level in game, we could actually sign a pay-per-view deal, so this is actually on pay-per-view. As it pertains to building to this show, the last, let's say, 24 hours has been a disaster. First, on SummerSlam, Rob Van Dam was injured. We weren't sure if it'd keep him out of action. Turns out it will, and he'll be out of action for 2 months now. We thought that would be the worst thing. I'd come up with a plan to alter the booking of the show around that, but then something else happened which will be addressed during the course of the show, basically destroying our plans going forward. The pay-per-view itself begins with Joey Styles and Taz at the announce table looking very serious, very somber as they introduce footage from earlier today. In the footage, we see Rob Van Dam out cold, mangled in the parking lot, having been run over. The cameras didn't catch him being run over, but they did see Sonny Siaki driving away, having left the world champion for dead in the parking lot. That's our storyline way of writing Rob Van Dam out of the pay-per-view. Joey Styles and Taz confirming the worst. Rob Van Dam has been taken to hospital and will not be defending the ECW World title tonight. The initial reports suggest that RVD will be out of action for a very long time, and Paul Heyman has been forced to address the situation at the open of the show. Paul Heyman then comes down to the ring with a furious look on his face, and he addresses the fact that RVD is unable to compete tonight. He's blurring the line somewhat between this being the storyline reason and the fact that RVD is actually injured. Heyman says that there's nothing he could do. Rob Van Dam hasn't been cleared to compete, but there was something else that was under his control, and that's Sabu. Heyman then reveals that the man that all these people have paid to see, the man they have cheered for all these years, hasn't showed up. Paul Heyman tells fans that he agrees with their negative feelings and begins to shoot on Sabu. Of course, it's an unscripted segment, so he goes on a rant about Sabu, making it clear that he will never compete in an ECW ring again. Sabu not showing up to the pay-per-view as if things weren't bad enough already. He's just thought, RVD's injured, I'm not showing up at all. Heyman says that he's used to having to deal with this kind of shit and promises that there will be a worthy main event, and with Rob Van Dam out, there will be a new ECW World Champion tonight. So it's two good segments ratings-wise to kick off the show, and we certainly need that because we have lost two of our biggest faces in the space of 24 hours. Like I said, a disastrous start to the pay-per-view, but hopefully we can win people round throughout the course of the night. The opening match of the night sees CM Punk defend his title against Rhino. We're looking to counter back, hit back against the negative feelings with a huge opener, and it's a good, very good really opening match. A 68C+, a 77 rating from CM Punk, a 60 rating from Rhino. I think this match could have been better, but as you can see, it only goes 10 minutes. We wanted a explosive opener to the pay-per-view. Rhino defeating CM Punk, taking advantage of those injured ribs the commentator's putting over how much pain CM Punk must be in, and a gore is enough for Rhino to win the ECW World Television title. Rhino stands tall after the match. The commentator is putting over the decisive nature of the victory, a match which went considerably shorter than their 15-minute time limit draw at SummerSlam. This was put down to CM Punk's injured ribs. Rhino, of course, responsible for the state of them. He'd played it perfectly in the build-up to this match. Punk was quickly checked on by a doctor at ringside, with Rhino pushing past the medical professional as he headed to the back as the new ECW television champion. It's another good segment. This has been a solid start to the show. Again, we need to keep this momentum up as we go into another segment with Paul Heyman. He is in front of a feed of the pay-per-view. He's on the phone, and it quickly becomes clear that he is talking to Rob Van Dam. Heyman says that he's had to replace RVD in the main event, and he's been told that Van Dam picks his own replacement. Heyman doesn't necessarily agree with this, but it's as if somebody higher up than him has told him this. When RVD gives his answer, Heyman looks unconvinced and says, I'll see what I can do. We then get the second match of the night, Subpar Wrestling and Little Heat. Tony Mamaluke defeating Little Guido in 10 minutes 4 with a roll-up, a small package, a 50 for Little Guido, a 37 for Tony Mamaluke. It's a surprising result, but I just think that if they do go their separate ways, Guido is going to be the one who automatically is much better than Tony Mamaluke. For that reason, I've given Mamaluke a bit of a shock victory just to give him a little bit of momentum. It'll fizzle out eventually, but it just gives him that boost going forward. At the start of the match, Tony Mamaluke tried to shake hands with Little Guido. Guido rejected, saying that he'd do it after the match and after he'd beaten Mamaluke. Of course, this didn't happen, and after the match, Mamaluke does try to shake hands with Guido, showing his respect to his partner, having picked up that surprising victory. Guido is clearly pissed off to have lost and takes it out on Mamaluke, refusing to shake the hand, a poor loser, heading to the back. On the outside, Guido orders Trinity to follow him, but she's having none of it. We then get another segment continuing that saga of the doomed main event. Paul Heyman is seen entering the doctor's room where he approaches CM Punk. Heyman says that he's spoken to RVD and he wants Punk as his replacement. Heyman says he assumes that RVD didn't see the opener, and Punk looks confused, having had his issues with RVD in the past, but Heyman added, he thinks you're the only guy who can stop the hustle out there. Before Punk can say anything, the doctor says that there's no way that Punk is going to be able to compete in tonight's main event, but Punk cuts him off. CM Punk tells the doctor to do whatever it takes, whatever he has to give him. He wants to compete in the main event. Match number 3, Balls Mahoney, Brent Albright and Chad Collier losing to the Extreme Horsemen, Steve Corino pinning Balls Mahoney. In terms of in-ring performance, Steve Corino head and shoulders above the rest. He always is. A 62 is a really good rating. We haven't got RVD and we haven't got Sabu anymore, so we certainly need to be utilising him more in the main event. This wasn't particularly a worthy match for Steve Corino. He's a lot better than everybody in it, but he does get the decisive pin over Balls Mahoney. The second hour of the show begins with a video package promoting the upcoming ECW World Tag Team title match. We go back to Heatwave, where Raven returned to save the ECW career of his lifelong rival, Tommy Dreamer. From that moment, the two have been forced into an odd couple pairing, with Paul Heyman looking for revenge on Raven for ruining his plot to remove Dreamer from the company. They will face one of the most contrasting teams to them possible, Ricky Reyes and Rocky Romero. They are dominant, they are cohesive, they are the Havana Pitbulls, and they are one of the most solid, unified teams in all of pro wrestling. That match for the ECW World Tag Team titles isn't particularly good. Rocky Romero doing pretty well, Dreamer doing okay, Ricky Reyes and Raven kind of disappointing, but the Havana Pitbulls make a successful defense. Raven and Dreamer not a particularly cohesive unit. They do as well as they can be expected to. Dreamer is taken out with a Cuban Missile Crisis. Raven makes no attempt to split up the pinfall. The Havana Pitbulls making the second defense of their ECW tag team titles. After the match, and long after the Havana Pitbulls have left with their titles, Raven stands on the apron, leaning against the ropes. He's just looking at Tommy Dreamer, who is down on the canvas. Dreamer is obviously hurting, but questions where Raven was during the decisive fall. Raven eventually enters the ring and helps Tommy Dreamer back to his feet. It's a struggle. He then kicks Dreamer between the legs, hitting him with a Raven effect DDT in the middle of the ring. A leopard doesn't change his spots, as according to commentary, and Raven proves this. They're not surprised, but they do disapprove of Raven's actions after everything that the pair have been forced through together in the last few months. In the back, Homicide is interviewed by Jade and talks about RVD's injury and Sabu's no-show. He uses this as evidence that the old ECW is dead and buried, and it's better that way. Homicide doesn't hold much hope for RVD's replacement, however, saying that he only knows one thing about tonight's main event. Whether it's Homicide or Low Key, the title is coming home with the Hustle. As he says this, Low Key walks into the interview area and nods his head. He affirms that the title is coming home to the Hustle, but makes it clear that he feels it'll be coming back around his waist. A video package that rates terribly looks at the rivalry between Elijah Burke and Kevin Furtick. It's kind of fitting because this has been a bit of a meandering, pointless, not very good storyline if I'm perfectly honest. The key moment, of course, being Kevin Furtick sending Angel Williams to the hospital with a chokeslam. Last month, Elijah Burke and Angel Williams returned to CyberSlam, issuing the challenge to Kevin Furtick and Shelly Martinez. That match is a terrible wrestling match with non-existent crowd heat, the rating reflecting that. Kevin Furtick getting a lot of static. I don't think we've seen that before. This is probably the longest match he's been in though, and he's not very good. The chaos of the match, it was booked as a mayhem match, did help hide how bad Shelly was. She got a 21 rating. Shelly Martinez and Kevin Furtick defeating Angel Williams and Elijah Burke in 8 minutes and 42 when Furtick pinned Burke with a chokeslam. There was a chance that Burke could win this match. That was while we were planning it, but in recent weeks he's just been a dick backstage, constantly getting heat with everybody in the locker room, so he's just losing as a punishment for that, and he's probably going to keep losing until his attitude improves or he's released. Back to another interview, Jade speaks with the victorious Extreme Horsemen ahead of Paul Burchill's match with Terry Funk up next. Steve Corino says that Balls, Brent and Chad all learned what the Horsemen are capable of tonight, but what Burchill is about to do to Funk is going to let the whole world know. Carino sends Burchill away to get ready for that match and vows that after tonight, Paul Burchill will have retired Terry Funk. So it's a good segment for Steve Carino, hyping up that match. It's not been a great storyline in terms of ratings, so that'll probably be a good last push for that. It's a 48D+. I did hope for better, but Terry Funk, of course, physically is absolutely knackered. He was visibly tiring towards the end of the 14-minute 37 match. We did slow build it, but still it didn't get a very good rating. It's a hardcore match, sort of weapons involved and all that sort of stuff. Terry Funk getting a 2x4, thinking he's going to win in the finish, but Burchill ducks under it and locks in a chicken wing from behind. Funk fades. There is no way he is overpowering Burchill. There is no way he's getting out. And eventually, with Funk out cold on the canvas, the referee has no choice but to call for the bell. After the match, Paul Burchill stands tall, having picked up his most impressive victory to date, with Terry Funk still out cold in the ring. The proud Funk is determined to walk to the back when he eventually regains his senses, but collapses on the outside as he leaves the ring. Terry Funk is in a terrible way, and the commentators show major concern. The hardcore icon helped to the back, looking a shell of his former self. Prior to the main event, Joey Styles and Taz run down the situation, recapping the situation going into the main event. Rob Van Dam is out injured, while Sabu has chosen to no-show the event. As a result, Homicide and Low-Ki will compete for the ECW World Championship, with CM Punk also taking part if he is cleared to compete. Just before that main event, I thought we needed to hype up the match again, try to get the crowd back on side. Coming back to the stage before that match, Paul Heyman looks to once again sell the enforced changes to the fans, looking to reframe the bad situation into a good one. Heyman is once again somewhat out of character as he puts aside his personal feelings to promote what we are about to see. Paul Heyman says that Homicide, Low-Ki and CM Punk are the new ECW. This is the vision he has been trying to instill, and they will put on a main event worthy of any ECW pay-per-view, whether it be 1997, 2001 or 2006. He puts over the fight of CM Punk, who he confirms will compete and has been cleared for his second match of the night. Heyman then leaves, imploring the fans to get behind the new true faces, the new stars of ECW. That main event gets a 71C+. I'm happy with that. It's a 3-way elimination match, originally scheduled to be a double jeopardy, but basically I couldn't find two people who I thought could take the space. It's strange booking, obviously, CM Punk losing the TV title and somehow ending up in the world title, but it's a unique situation, the storyline reason being Rob Van Dam choosing CM Punk as the only guy he can see as capable of overcoming the members of the Hustle. A 74 for CM Punk shows why he is in that main event. Low-Ki also very close, an excellent performance from him. Homicide, the weak link in the match, but still okay, and it overall is a great main event for the pay-per-view, much better than I feared. It was a match with good wrestling and decent reaction. CM Punk under the cosh for almost the entirety of the 20-minute match. Eventually, he somehow managed to eliminate Homicide. It was then a one-on-one CM Punk versus Low-Ki. Of course, Low-Ki the overwhelming favourite, having only been in one match and not having those injured ribs like CM Punk. But in the end, CM Punk hits a go-to-sleep to Low-Ki, picking up a victory to become the ECW World Champion. The pay-per-view ends in a shocking manner, of course, CM Punk beating both Low-Ki and Homicide to become the champion. A shocking turn of events, a roller coaster of emotions. He entered November to Remember as the TV champion, lost the title, but then was placed in the World Championship match and has left as the ECW World Champion. Joey Styles and Taz say that this could only happen in ECW and anything can go down on a live pay-per-view. They took one last shot at Sabu as they signed off on the show, promoting what will be an explosive fallout next week on CyberSlam. So it's a 70C+ overall. CM Punk, the star of the show again, absolutely brilliant. Two great performances in the two best matches of the night. I think we were helped by having a number of segments on the show. Paul Heyman and CM Punk and even Rob Van Dam all over the show. Their ratings obviously giving us a boost. It's a good pay-per-view overall. Not particularly great matches throughout, but overall, we've got a 70C+, which is one of our best shows ever. That is increasing our popularity also in 27 regions, which I think all of the regions that we were shown in. We're going to praise CM Punk for his performance, Low-Ki for his performance, and Rhino for his performance. And then we will move on to CyberSlam episode number 37.